Welcome to Ace Your RES exam. Look, if your desk right now is just buried under notes, highlighters, module printouts, yeah, you're probably one of the brave ones prepping for the Singapore real estate salesperson exam. We get it, the amount of legal stuff, HDB rules, all those finance acronyms. It feels like, well, a lot. But we're here to help cut through that, our mission today, to take that huge stack and really zero in on the crucial high-stakes stuff. Think of this as your rapid review, hitting the specific details from those 6 core modules that seem to pop up again and again. Precision is the name of the game.
It really is. Precision is everything with the RES exam. You can't just be sort of right the examiner's test if you truly understand how the rules apply.
Yeah.
Especially where different rules overlap. Like, how does a legal idea from Module 1 actually play out in practice under Module 5? Making those connections, that's key. It's about the why as much as the what. Okay, perfect. Let's dive in then. Starting with the basics. Core Segment 1, the legal foundations of ownership. This is where you separate the pros from the hopefuls. Absolutely. First hurdle, ownership types. You've got a clearly defined freehold title. What is it?
Absolute ownership, right? Land, building, forever.
Exactly. Absolute unlimited time. And you need to immediately contrast that with leasehold, which is, for a fixed period. That basic distinction underpins so much.
And building on that rights, there's a contract and then there's something more. This idea that a legal right binds third party, how does that work?
Yeah, that's fundamental. A simple contract, say, I promise to sell you my chair, just binds me and you. But a proprietary right, something tied legally to the land itself, like an easement, maybe, that right sticks to the land.
Sticks to the land.
Meaning if I sell the land, the new owner is still bound by that right, provided it's properly registered, of course. It affects third parties. That's a really critical legal concept.
Got it. That makes sense why it's so important. Now, let's talk arrangements. Clients often buy property together. What are the big differences we need to know between joint tenancy and tenancy in common?
The main thing, the absolute key difference, is what happens if one owner passes away.
Okay.
With joint tenancy, there's the right of survivorship. The deceased owner's share automatically goes to the surviving joint tenants. Bypasses any will.
Automatically, wow.
Yeah. But with tenancy in common, you own distinct shares. Could be 50-50, 70-30, whatever. Those shares do not automatically pass to the co-owner. They become part of the deceased's estate, distributed according to their will or intestacy rules. Big difference in practice.
Definitely. Okay, moving into some niche details, stuff that might catch you out. What should we flag here?
Well, be aware of frustration of contract. It sounds dramatic, and it is. It means something totally unforeseen happens, through no fault of either party, making the contract literally impossible to perform.
Like the property burning down.
Exactly. Or being acquired by the government unexpectedly. It has to be something that fundamentally changes the situation, not just, the market dropping, making it a bad deal. It discharges the contract.
Yeah.
And you also need a basic grasp of Muslim property succession, or Faraid. It's important because for Muslim clients, Islamic law governs how assets are distributed on death, and this can override standard inheritance rules.
Good point. And finally, for this legal section, the big question. Who can buy what? Foreigner property ownership. What are the main restrictions? Okay, simply put, residential property, especially landed property, is tightly controlled for foreigners, often needs specific government approval from the LDAU.
But for commercial or industrial properties, generally the rules are less strict. You need to know that difference, especially landed versus non-landed, like condos. Okay, legal groundwork covered. Now let's wade into arguably the trickiest area for many. Core Segment 2, HDB rules. Public housing. This is where those numbers and dates really matter. They really do. Let's start with loans. You need the criteria for the maximum age for HDB housing loan. It's about how old the borrowers are, which affects how long the loan tenure can be. Generally, the loan needs to be fully paid off by age 65 or maybe 75 under certain conditions.
And the timing trap you mentioned earlier, the MOP.
Yes, the minimum occupation period. Year after year, this trips people up. You must be precise about the MOP starting month. When does it actually begin?
Not the day you pick up the keys.
No. That's the common mistake. It starts on the first day of the month following the date you collect the keys, not the key collection day itself. That slight difference, maybe a few weeks, can be critical for future plans.
First day of the month after. Okay, that precision is vital. Any special MOPs to know?
Yeah, briefly, be aware of the MOP rules for the Fresh Start scheme. This is for certain second-timer families, and they might have different, sometimes shorter, MOP requirements,
Yeah.
and you absolutely have to understand the resale levy. This applies if someone's bought a subsidized flat before and is now buying another one. You need to know who pays it, when, and roughly how it's calculated. It depends on the first flat type.
Got it. And that edge case we talked about before, HDB shophouse inheritance going to a foreigner, what happens there?
Right, it's tricky. An HDB shophouse usually has a commercial part and maybe a residential part. A foreigner might be able to inherit the commercial component.
Huh.
But owning the residential part, that's subject to all the usual HDB eligibility rules. So often, the foreigner would have to sell that residential component to an eligible Singaporean or PR within a certain time frame. It's not straightforward. Definitely complex. All right, let's switch to finance, a jungle of acronyms. Core Segment 3, financing, taxation, costs. We have to demystify MSR and TDSR. Yes, crucial difference here. MSR, first mortgage servicing ratio. This one's quite strict, usually capped at 30% of the borrower's gross monthly income.
30%.
And it applies to only HDB flats and executive condos, ECs, bought directly from the developer. Only those.
Okay, MSR is specific. What about TDSR?
TDSR, total debt servicing ratio, this is the big one, the overall gatekeeper. It's usually capped at 55%, sometimes 60%, depending on factors like loan to value of gross monthly income.
And it applies more broadly.
Yes, it applies to all residential property loans, HDB, private new, resale, refinancing, everything. And crucially, TDSR looks at all your monthly debt obligations, credit cards, car loans, other mortgages, everything, not just the property loan you're applying for.
So MSR is property focus for HDBSEs. TDSR is total debt for all properties.
Exactly. The goal is to prevent overborrowing, both for individuals and the system. Makes sense. Now, the one everyone groans about,
Right.
ABSD, additional buyer stamp duty, the classic question. Does my holiday home overseas affect my ABSD here, overseas property ownership? Good news here, usually. The rule is clear. Your ABSD liability in Singapore is based only on the number of residential properties you own in Singapore.
Only Singapore count matters.
Right. Owning property overseas doesn't add to your count for ABSD purposes here. That's a key piece of advice.
Okay, but what about getting ABSD back? Remission. That 6-month deadline is famous. What are the absolute must-knows for the ABSD remission condition?
The main one is for married couples, buying a second property together. The condition is they must sell their first residential property within 6 months of buying the second one, assuming the second one is completed.
6 months. Strict deadline.
Absolutely strict. If you miss that deadline, the ABSD is payable, no refunds. Agents have to track this very, very carefully for their clients.
And just briefly, those special agreements.
Yeah, you should be aware that certain international agreements exist. The ABSD for Norway other guides cover this. Basically, citizens and sometimes PRs from specific countries like Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, Switzerland, and the U.S. get treated like Singapore citizens for ABSD on their first residential property purchase here.
Good niche point.
Okay, shifting to paperwork and process flow. Core Segment 4, contracts and documentation. When does talking about it become legally committed? Let's start with TA versus LOI. Big difference, especially in rentals. The LOI, letter of intent, is usually the first step. It outlines the basic terms, rent, lease period, etc. It's generally non-binding, more like a serious proposal.
A proposal, huh?
The TA, Tenancy Agreement, that's the formal, legally binding contract. That's the document that seals the deal based on the agreed terms. LOI is the handshake, TA is the signed contract.
But you mentioned, can an LOI ever become binding?
Technically, it's possible, but rare. If an LOI is drafted extremely carefully, uses language showing clear intent to be bound immediately, and covers all the essential terms without saying subject to contract or subject to TA, maybe.
So usually assume non-binding unless it's really explicitly stated otherwise.
That's the safe approach for the exam, yes. Treated as non-binding typically. Now, in sales, you often have the booking fee.
Right, the initial payment.
Yeah, it shows the buyer's serious intent, secures the unit for a short period. Usually, it's credited towards the option fee or the purchase price later. Agents can generally handle this for residential, but not always for other types. We'll get to that.
Okay. And the real point of no return for a buyer in a typical sale, the OTP.
The option purchase, yes. The OTP validity periods is critical. For HDB resale, it's typically 14 days. During this time, the seller cannot sell to anyone else.
And for the buyer.
If the buyer exercises the option within that period by paying the option exercise fee, they are legally committed to buying. If they let the OTP expire, they forfeit the option fee they paid initially. It's our deadline. Okay, commitment locked in. Let's switch gears completely now to how agents must behave. Core Segment 5. Professional practice, ethics, and CEA regulations, the non-negotiables. Yeah, this is the bedrock of being a licensed professional. And one huge rule, Absolutely critical. RES handling cash for commercial industrial properties.
What's the rule?
You absolutely cannot. Agents are forbidden from handling any transaction money booking fees, deposits, rent, anything for commercial or industrial property deals. It must go directly between the parties or via lawyers. Handling cash here is a major violation.
Okay, zero cash handling for commercial industrial. Got it. Now, CEA's fit and proper test. How far does that reach? What about something totally unrelated, like, say, insubordination and charge in military court from years ago? Could that affect getting a license?
It could. The CEA looks at character. Does the past incident, whatever it was, suggest a lack of honesty, integrity, or trustworthiness? If a military charge showed serious disregard for rules or authority, yeah, it might raise questions about whether someone can be trusted with client funds and sensitive deals. It's case by case, but the principle is character.
Right. It's about trustworthiness and day-to-day rules.
Well, ethical advertising is huge. Everything you market must be accurate. No misleading photos, prices, sizes, total honesty. And you must follow the record-keeping period keep transaction documents for typically 5 years. It's for compliance, accountability, anti-money laundering checks. Okay. 2 quick technical definitions before we move on. Property trader criteria. Basically, this is about tax. If IRA sees you frequently buying and selling properties primarily for profit, they might classify you as a property trader. Your profits would then likely be taxed as income, not capital gains. It's about intent and frequency.
And methods of sale. The common ways properties are sold. Private treaty, that's your standard negotiation between buyer and seller. Public auction, competitive bidding. And tender submitting sealed bids by a deadline. Got it. Last segment. Core segment 6. Property management, maintenance, and those special scenarios. The practical, on-the-ground advice.
Okay, nuts and bolts time. First, occupancy limits. You need to know the maximum occupancy rules for private residential units. It's often based on square footage.
And who counts towards that limit? What about the helper?
Good question. Yes, the inclusion of helper and maximum occupancy is definite. Foreign domestic workers absolutely count towards the total number of occupants allowed. Don't forget them in the calculation.
Right. And agent duties. What about defects, like mold?
If you, as the agent, are aware of a significant defect like ongoing mold disclosure issues, you have a duty. You should advise your client, usually the seller or landlord, to disclose this material fact to potential buyers or tenants. Hiding known issues can lead to big problems later. Transparency is key.
What if renovations affect neighbors, like boundary walls?
Yeah, renovation involving neighbor house, especially party walls or boundaries, needs careful handling. There are often legal requirements, possibly needing surveyors or engineers, and definitely formal communication or agreement with the neighbor is crucial to avoid disputes.
Makes sense. And for the commercial folks listening, 2 quick points. Remember, GTO, gross turnover rent. In some retail leases, part of the rent is calculated as a percentage of the tenant's sales revenue. You need to understand how that works.
And specific uses, like setting up a childcare center. Getting childcare opening approval involves a specific regulatory process, usually needing approvals from multiple agencies like URA, ECDA. It's not just about finding a space.
And finally, just to show how broad this all is, define a land surveyor.
Yes, feels basic, but essential. The land surveyor is the professional who officially measures and defines the legal boundaries of a property. They ensure the physical land matches the title documents, preventing disputes over exactly where one property ends and another begins. Crucial for clear ownership. Phew! Okay, we did it. A rapid-fire tour through the absolute must-knows: legal rights, MOP timing, cash handling rules, TDSR versus MSR, disclosure duties. We really hit the core legal, financial, ethical points for the RES exam. Nailing these details, understanding the nuances, that's your path to success. Absolutely. And remember, just knowing the definitions isn't quite enough. The real skill, what makes a great agent, is connecting the dots.
Connecting the dots.
Yeah, like, how does that HDB MOP rule we talked about impact a couple's ability to get ABSD remission later when they upgrade to a condo? Thinking about how HDB rules affect tax rules or how loan limits, TDSR, affect contract negotiations. That synthesis is what you're aiming for. That's competence. You've put in the hard work. You've got the key concepts now. Trust your preparation. Go in there and ace that exam. From both of us, we wish you the very best of luck in your upcoming RES.